Hey there, Mike Plume here. How you been? Good to hear. Welcome to Stories from a Lonesome Stretch of Highway. Every once in a while, every now and again, when the moon's holding water, I'm going to pour a cup of coffee and tell some stories. Episode 4, Voiceover Work. Back in May of 2003, Jenny and I packed up our apartment and left Tennessee. I felt like I'd come to the end of the road in my life as a musician and as a songwriter. I guess I was just frustrated with the whole thing and needed a break. I was burnt out. Anyway, so we moved to Toronto and got a little apartment there in September of 2003. And we settled in. A friend of mine, Joel Stewart, you may know him. Joel and I have done a lot of music videos over the years. In fact, all of the music videos I think I've ever done, Joel has been the director. We've done a lot of crazy things. We've had a lot of fun. We have blown the foam off many a beer in many a pub in various locales in North America. Let's put it that way. Anyway, Joel said that he said, "Hey man, when you get to Toronto, you should maybe look into doing some voiceover work." He says, "You smoked just enough cigarettes and screamed at the top of your lungs for enough years now that you've developed a husk in your voice that would translate well to doing narration." I'd never really thought of that before. But I figured, yeah, what have I got to lose? I'm not going to be touring anymore. I got out of my publishing deal, so I wasn't on the hook for that anymore. So therefore, I wasn't getting paid to write songs anymore. I wasn't doing anything really. So I got out the phone book and started calling all these various voiceover agents around Toronto. And I went in and auditioned for a dozen different voiceover agents maybe. And, never had any luck. There was no commitments. They all turned me down. They all said, "Yeah, no, we got lots of guys who sound like you. We're fine. Thank you, though." And I just continued on with my day. I remember one agent said that I should take some enunciation classes. And I didn't want to be a voiceover guy that bad that I had to go back to school. So I moved on. This would have been September, October 2003, something like that. Fast forward to June 2004, and Jenny and I are anxiously awaiting the arrival of Ruby Tallulah Plume. She was expected either in late June or early July. It ended up being July 7th. So in early June, we were at prenatal classes. And there's 20 couples, so like 40 people sitting in a big semicircle. And at the front was the instructor. And so at the first day of the first day of class, she was introducing all the couples, and it was going through. This is Tom, and Tom's a lawyer, and this is his wife Rebecca, and she's also a lawyer, and they're expecting a baby boy at the end of June. And then this is Jonathan, and he's in high finance, and this is his wife Stephanie, and she is an architect. And they're expecting a baby girl also at the end of June. And it goes around all the couples, and they come to us. And so this is Jenny, and Jenny's a music therapist. And this is her husband, Mike, and he's unemployable. And then they get to the next couple, and there's a couple sitting beside us. And the instructor's like, "This is Lisa, and she's in graphic design. And this is her husband, Jed, and he's an actor." And so this Jed character sitting beside me, he sort of raises his hand and says, "Well, I'm not so much I don't do a whole lot of acting anymore. I do more voiceover work than anything." And she says, "Oh, have you done anything that we may have heard before?" And he just sort of leans forward in his chair and he goes, "Pontiac, built for drivers." And everyone there was like, "That's the guy. That's the voice that I've heard for the last 10 years saying Pontiac, built for drivers." And I remember thinking, what are the odds that he is sitting right beside me? I just thought that was pretty cool. I was starstruck, to be honest. On our lunch break, I went over and introduced myself to him and said that I just moved to town and I was a singer and thought that I would like to maybe try out the voiceover work industry. And man, he gave me his agent's phone number. And I since learned over the years that anytime somebody finds out that you're a voiceover guy, they're everybody. Usually the lazier the guy, the better they think they'll be at voiceover work. So that's probably why I thought I'd be good at it. But over the years, I've met countless people who said, I always thought I could be a voiceover guy. You mean to tell me you don't even have to get out of your sweatpants to go to work? No. Yeah, I've always wanted to be a voice guy. Anyway, so I talked to Jed. He gave me his agent's phone number. It was one of the agents who I auditioned for, 8 or 9 months earlier. And so I gave them a call and said, "Hey, Jed gave me your phone number and said, maybe I could come down and audition for you guys." And I went in, I read for them, and this time they said, "You know what? We'll book you." And so I spent the next year auditioning for everything. I read a bunch of scripts for them so that they could send out a demo reel. Burger King, flame broiled, stuff like that. And anyway, so I did a bunch of auditions and no luck. Didn't get a single booking. If I thought once I got a voiceover agent that I was going to be booked 5 or 6 days a week, making stupid amounts of money, I was mistaken. So that would have been, like I said, in June of 2004. In May of 2005, I am driving down the road and I just made an illegal left off of University onto Bloor and immediately got pulled over by the police. And I was sitting there on the side of the road when my phone rang, and it was my voiceover agent. And he says, "Okay, hey man, I got a booking for you tomorrow for Budweiser." And I noticed that he said booking, not an audition, but I just assumed it was the same thing, booking, audition, what's the difference? And he said, "So anyway, I got a booking for you tomorrow with Budweiser, tomorrow afternoon, 1 o'clock. You're going to need to go to ACTRA, which is the actors union." He says, "You're going to need to go to ACTRA and buy a permit. It's going to cost you like $700 or something, but it's well worth it." And I remember thinking, I got to buy a $700 permit to audition for Budweiser? And he goes, no, man, you got the gig." I said, "I got the gig? How did that happen?" And whenever you call my voiceover agent, ETM, Edna Talent Management, if you at home are thinking, maybe I could be a voiceover guy, ETM. Anyway, so whenever you call ETM, when they put you on hold, instead of there being music playing or something like that, they have their voiceover actors reading Burger King, flame broiled. And so it just so happened when they were on hold, my voice went by. And so when Paul, my agent, picked up the phone, they said, "We'll take that guy. We'll take that plume character." And that's how I got my first gig. And to this day, I've still never passed an audition. So that was pretty cool. So the next morning I get up, I go down to ACTRA. I drop my $700 or whatever it was for the permit. And then I make my way to the recording session, which was at a studio in downtown Toronto. And I go in, and man, it was catered, and there was like, advertising executives, and all these people were hanging around, and they're eating sushi, and there was like a chocolate waterfall, and it was crazy. I mean, and I was really nervous. They gave me the script, and I remember thinking, oh my God, don't screw this up, man, don't screw this up. Because I hadn't even seen the script yet. I didn't know what I was going to be reading, and I was scared I was going to, just fuck it up, really. So, but to sort of break the ice, I walked up to the Budweiser people and thanked them for hiring me. And I said, hey, just, I want to let you know that I'm very familiar and a big fan of your product. And in fact, I was doing some market research last night. And they laughed and I laughed, and it made life a little easier. And helped me to relax when the tape rolled. And it was a cool commercial. It was just the bottle of Budweiser being poured into the glass. There was no actors. There was no nothing. It may still be on. Just a timeless commercial. And the voiceover was just, there's a little paragraph at the top on the label of Budweiser. A little paragraph. And that's what my script was. It was just me reading, "This is the world-famous Budweiser beer. We know of no other brand that costs so much to produce and age. Our exclusive Beechwood aging provides a smoothness and a drinkability you'll find in no other beer." That was my gig. 10 minutes after I read, I probably could have left my car running. I probably didn't need to pay for parking. Because the parking police probably wouldn't have made it walk by my car. And the amount of time that I was in the studio, I went in and I read it twice, and they said, "Perfect, way you go." And I just couldn't believe it. It's an easy way to make a buck, I'll tell you that. So that was cool. I was kind of thinking, boy, I could get into doing this 8 hours a day. Anyway, about a week later, I got another phone call from my agent. He says, "Got another booking for you. You're gonna need to go back to back down to Actor. You got to buy another permit. It's not gonna cost you $700 this time, but it's still, you got to get 5 of these permits, and then you can become a full-fledged member of the union." Yeah, okay, whatever. I'd heard stories that it had taken, people years to get those 5 permits, but well, I now had 2 under my belt. So onward. So this next gig was for GM Goodwrench, and it was all I said was, "GM Goodwrench, your tire store." So that was my next gig. A week later, I got my agent calls me again. He's like, "Hey, you got to go back to Actra and get another permit. This one's for the LCBO. Whiskey Rocks on now at the LCBO." And anyway, before I knew it, I had my 5 permits, and I was a full-fledged member of the Actors Union, and that was kind of cool. But more importantly, was my agent had a little Thursday night hockey league, and it was just a league that he had. He rented the ice every Thursday night at 10 o'clock or something, and it was just all his voiceover actors playing hockey. So it was fun. So you'd be sitting on the bench, and hearing these conversations going on the bench or on the ice, but it was all voice people. So it would be stuff like, "I'm open, Tommy. Nice pass, Jimmy." Crazy. It would be a great SNL skit, really, when I think about it. But eventually, so in March of 2006, so now I've been like a voice actor for the better part of a year. Jenny and Ruby and I went to Nashville to visit old friends and introduce them all to Ruby. And while I was there, I was offered another publishing deal. They said, "Would you ever think of running away and joining the circus again?" And I had. I knew when we left Tennessee in 2003 that it might have been I probably just needed a break. I probably didn't need to quit the industry entirely. Anyway, was offered a publishing deal, accepted the publishing deal, got back to Toronto, packed up our apartment again, moved back to Tennessee, and continued to do some voice work every once in a while. Not a whole lot of stuff, but then one day, we'd been living back in Tennessee for 3 or 4 months. My agent calls me again. Hey, where you at? I'm in Tennessee. Okay, I'm going to find a studio for you. I got a booking. Chevy Silverado commercial. This would have been in December of 2006. And so they find a studio in Tennessee. Not exactly a tough thing to do. Not a tall order by any stretch. No shortage of studios. Show up at a studio and they give me the script. And pretty much all I read was, this is our truck. The next generation Chevy Silverado. The 2007 Motor Trend Truck of the Year. And I said those lines, once a month for the next 6 years. That was my job. I continued to record and write and tour sporadically. But my main gig was I was the voice for Chevy Silverado from 2006, December 2006 to July 2013, something like that. So if you were watching a hockey game back then and saw a Silverado commercial, and that was my voice that you heard saying, the next generation Chevy Silverado. Good gig. That was a good gig. And it was cool because at that point, Ruby would have been 2 years old. And so I'd get these gigs and I'd show up at the studio and she'd be in her car seat sleeping. I'd put her in the stroller. I'd walk in. She would be in the studio with me, sound asleep. I'd have my headphones on. I would read, the next generation Chevy Silverado. All right, I'll see you guys next month. And we'd be back in the car, driving down the road. Crazy, crazy gig. One time I remember showing up at the studio. It was at Reba McEntire's studio down on Music Row of all places. I did a lot of my Silverado gigs there. And usually, the engineer would be in the control room, and then I would be in the studio itself. And they would have a little table set up with a cup of coffee and a microphone and my script, and I would sort of sit there. And I got to the point where I pretty much had it memorized. The next generation Chevy Silverado. And so I would sort of, read the script, and it would change a little bit every month, but nothing drastic. But anyway, so one day I show up for a session, and in the control room is the engineer and my microphone and cup of coffee and my script. And I said, oh, what's going on here? And I look in the studio and I can see that they've got like a chair set up, and they're focusing some lights and all this kind of stuff. And I said, oh, what's going on in there? He goes, man, I screwed up, man. I double booked the studio. He said, so you're gonna have to record your Silverado bit in here today. I said, yeah, okay, no problem. I said, who's going in the studio? Who are they filming in there? He goes, Dolly Parton's on her way in. I said, you gotta be kidding me. 3 minutes later, I hear this voice that I've heard and this laugh that I've heard my whole life. And I know it right away. It's Dolly Parton. She's coming down the hall, and she walks into the control room, says hi to the engineer. His name is Aaron, and says hello to me. And it's like she just couldn't have been a nicer person. She was so cool, and she treated me like we were long lost friends. Yeah, she's just a class act all the way around. And so she goes in the studio and she introduces herself to the camera guys and everybody. And then at one point, I remember they call Aaron, who was kind of engineering both sessions. They call Aaron. They say, "Hey, man, Dolly needs her lapel mic put on." And I remember Aaron sort of going into the studio, and he's got this lapel mic, and he has to pin it onto her. He's standing there, and she knows that he's a bit nervous, and she goes, "Oh, just dive on in, they ain't gonna bite." And he comes back in the studio, and he says, "I am so calling my dad when I get home from work today." It's a very funny moment. Yeah, so that's kind of what my voiceover life was. I did that gig. That was my main gig for six years, something like that. 6.5 years. It was a great gig. I eventually ended up losing that job to Tim Allen. It's just what happens. And then once you lose a voice gig for a car company or anything, your voice becomes tired. I wasn't tired, but the industry becomes tired of your voice, and so they're like, "Well, he can't. He was the voice for Silverado. He can't go work for Ford now. It's going to confuse everything." So they kind of put you away, and so I've yet to have a really continuous gig like the Silverado gig. I did narrate a couple documentaries for the Edmonton Oilers a couple of years ago when they built the new arena downtown. It was a 2-part series on Sportsnet called "The Building of an Icon," and so I narrated those 2 1-hour shows as well. But yeah, that's kind of, boy, if you're going to be a musician, the chances of you just earning your living from one income stream is slim to none. So you gotta kind of find different ways to bring home the bacon. And over the years, I've made some money touring. I've made some money as a songwriter, and I also help pay the bills by doing voice work. And it's a lot of fun. It's one of those things you kind of Forrest Gump into. You can't really plan for that. I kind of felt like Costanza when he was a hand model. There was really nothing I did to deserve to get to be a voiceover guy. I just kind of stumbled into it, and stumbling is what I do best. So yeah. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for listening. Take care, and we'll see you next time.